This is called the Dirty Games. Ross sat on the treatment table as his trainer placed a tray with cotton wool, a drug vial and a bottle of antiseptic on the stainless steel trolley next to him. Preparations had begun as the clock ticked over to 6:49 in the evening, the signal for his trainer to load the syringe with the clear liquid from the vial, sterilise his charge's arm and tie the surgical tubing around it, pressing it close to his body, trapping it against his rib cage. The blood gathered in a vein and he reached for the syringe. He pierced the skin and, gently putting pressure on the plunger, squeezed it dry. Ross's eyelids stretched their sockets, burgeoning like a generator that had just been fired up, converting fuel into power that surged around his body, making his chest rise and fall as he took sharp intakes of breath with his newfound vitality. He was a human firework that was ready to burst into space, his blood vessels forming a 90,000-mile fuse that had been lit and was planned to explode at a predetermined time. Controlling his breathing pattern again, with the support of his companion, he took his first steps, tentatively placing one foot in front of the other, until the force driving every muscle to spasm and erupt into action were subdued by his sheer willpower. He turned the door handle while his trainer tidied away the instruments he had used, and crossing the threshold found himself outside in the tunnel that was a melee of activity. He had to suppress the desire to run or make eye contact, trying to walk as calmly as he could towards the centre of the complex and the arena. The low-level hum in the distance drew him like car headlights on the road. The increasing frequency of the buzz in his head kept him walking forward, inexorably drawn like a moth to a flame. The closer he got to the arena, the more pronounced his steps became, like a drunk trying to stay in the centre of the path for fear of drawing attention to his condition. The roof disappeared as the tunnel ended, and he emerged into the arena where the cordons guided them into the designated waiting areas. Officials checked competitors' accreditation and directed them to the correct check-in desk. Ross waited quietly, every moment accentuated as the need to act naturally felt more and more of an act, as the time bomb inside him ticked away with every heartbeat, every breath and every step. The electronic notice board confirmed the time until the race, so he did a few stretches before heading to the changing area about 10 minutes before the gun. Arriving, he saw his competitor name on a box where he deposited his tracksuit and sunglasses and secured the self-adhesive labels to his shirt bearing his number, and mingled with the other runners who were waiting to be called to the blocks. Having become accustomed to the noise, he heard his race called and followed all the other athletes in order of their start position onto the track, where the silver metal blocks stood in front of all of them. The public announcement system began introducing all of the runners, and he, being in lane 7, stood uncomfortably as his name was called, because all eyes would be upon him as he strode forward to wave for the cameramen filming them. A few moments later, they were called to the blocks and were under orders, perched precariously on the metal plates that they waited tensely for the starting signal. "Take your marks," the official shouted, as dead quiet fell across the stadium and spectators sat expectant of a packed 10 seconds of action which would take their breath away. The gun split the air, sparking the fuse secreted inside the athlete in lane 7, as Ross sprang from the blocks with every sinew energised, muscles pounding as his feet thumped the ground, forcing his body forwards and propelling him like a train down a track, a missile towards its target. From the first step, his blood boiled as he broke the millions of invisible bonds he had been containing, that needed to be split to equalise the pressure in his body, to turn the tension that had been building inside him into energy that manifests itself in sweat that streamed from every pore, cascading down his forehead into his face, trickling down his arms and legs, splashing from his hands as they pumped up and down, generating such tremendous force that his whole body rocked back and forth. Staring straight ahead, aiming at a point in the distance, his torso rode the engine room of his hips and thighs that strained to produce torque, which his legs fought to control as they levered him forwards towards the line. The blocks were a distant memory. 3 or 4 seconds had consigned them to history, and so too his adversaries, which were trailing, quickly disappearing from his peripheral vision on each side as he concentrated on getting from A to B as soon as possible. Focusing on the convergence of the white lines, the demarcations of his lane roared past him on both sides as the target widened, the tape approaching rapidly. The crowd, a patchwork quilt of colours, a selection of computerised pixels indistinguishable against the black background that night cast upon the stadium, cheered the athletes as every tenth clicked over and the clock raced to beat the field to the line. The wind whistled past his ears, his jowls bounced as he heaved air from his lungs and gulped fresh mouthfuls to sustain the effort he needed. His muscles burned with lactic acid, his face grimaced as he strove to extract the last dregs of energy from his tank. Fear invading his eyes, concern for being overtaken before he reached his destination. Taking his bow, along with what he hoped would be his supporting cast, he crossed the line and waited for the ovation dreamed of by his competitors, the appreciation of spectators that they were the champion, the best in the world. Exhausted, hands on hips, recovering from his exertions, he stood looking around for the results board, while others lay on the ground, prostrate from the struggle they called a day job. The computer processed all the information sent through the miles of cable around the arena, and the lights flashed revealing the winner. Ross Mathis, lane 7, 9.38 seconds it read, and he held his head in disbelief that he had won. In that moment of elation he felt weightless. Clouds engulfed his vision, his body floating high above the earth looking down through white blankets of sky. His legs hung limply below him as gravity fooled his senses for what seemed like an eternity before his head and chest hit the ground and he lay breathless, motionless and lifeless. Medics rushed to his aid, but the hands that compressed the chest were unable to reanimate the athlete. The mouths that expanded his lungs were unable to resuscitate the runner who had not so long ago had been cheered to victory by a crowd that watched in disbelief as the race now seemed insignificant in the great scheme of things.